Good Monday morning. This is Dustin Hobbs with the California MBA. Welcome to Connect, our weekly podcast featuring one-on-one interviews with movers and shakers in the mortgage industry. We've got a great guest today. I'm excited to get in the conversation with him here in just a sec. But before we do, let's thank our sponsors over at Accelerate. Accelerate, the leading mortgage lead management CRM and engagement platform that helps lenders close more loans by increasing efficiency gains across sales, marketing, operations, and management. It's recently announced the first of its kind mobile app. This groundbreaking mobile app features full lead management, lead distribution, click-to-call, inbound call routing, first call automation, and two-way compliant text messaging, and provides access to critical loan information without having to use a laptop or log in to your LOS system. It also empowers loan officers by intelligently distributing leads, managing pipelines, prioritizing your day, automating best practices, and personalizing the borrower's journey, all from the mobile app. So for more information or to catch a demo, visit accelerate.com, or you can call the number here listed in the description below. All right, well, I'm excited to get in the conversation now with our guest today. Let me welcome in Cody Charfauros. Cody is the Principal Managing Director at Slatt Capital's San Diego offices, and he's actually recently joined the Board of Directors here at the California MBA. Welcome, Cody.
Thanks, Dustin. I'm excited. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, tell us for a few minutes, or give us the elevator pitch on what Slatt Capital is all about for those that aren't familiar.
Sure, yeah. So our company is a family-owned mortgage banking firm based in San Francisco, and we've got offices up and down the California coast. Primarily what we do is smaller balance commercial real estate financing. So we represent individual investors that are buying and refinancing their commercial mortgages. And yeah, we get to watch our clients grow and help them grow, and I love doing what I do.
Oh, great. Thanks, Cody. And so I have to admit that it was a bit of a pretense there that I didn't know anything about Slatt Capital. Of course, you guys have been members for a long time, and
Yeah.
Barry Slatt, founder of the company, was one of our chair at some point. He actually helped found our commercial real estate finance conference, and the company's been a great sponsor and supporter for a long time. But for those in the audience that may not know, that was helpful. So
Sure.
Cody, let's jump into your background personally here. Tell us about how you got into the industry, what led you to Slatt, and sort of your niche in the market.
Yeah, so like a lot of folks in commercial real estate generally, my path was a little bit winding and strange. I started first in general business world. I did primarily production in the film industry in LA. Did that for a lot of years, and really running our business, but had a small portion of my role was really related to real estate. So for example, I had to manage our facilities for our corporate account, had to build out space for my employees to live in, and at one point I had directly or indirectly about 500 employees in 5 different locations in different parts of the country and even parts of the world report to me. And I found after a number of years that I enjoyed the real estate portion of my job more than the film portion of my job. So I started looking for the exit wings, and my best friend actually and college roommate from USC had joined our firm as an analyst early on, and now he's a producer as well. And he said, I love working for this group. I love the business. Here's how the business operates. And I think they could, you could find a position that would work for you there. I don't think there's an active job, but maybe there's something, you can talk about. So I met with Michael in our LA office, and we hit it off. And a number of months later, they offered me a position. Now it's been almost 8 years, and I could not be happier. I love our company. I love the people I work with, and I love our industry. I think we've got a lot of exciting things ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think you make an interesting point there that, and maybe even without meaning to, but it's amazing how much the real estate market goes into every asset or every aspect of, especially the business world. I mean, every business has to deal with real estate on some level. So, you can always, as you mentioned, you can always find an off ramp to or an exit route to, going into real estate development full time or on the lending side as you've done. So
Indeed.
That's interesting. So tell us, I'm curious, I mean, it's the news of the year in 2020. You can't have a conversation about 2020 without mentioning what's going on with the COVID-19 crisis and pandemic. And so I'm curious at this point, I mean, almost hopefully looking back a little bit more than looking forward. How has the company dealt with the challenges, and especially on the commercial side? I know it's such a face-to-face, relationship-based industry. So how have you guys dealt with that?
Yeah, I mean, we pivoted pretty quickly in using our technology forums just to be able to stay in touch with our teams and collaborate internally. We actually had Zoom 3 years ago, and we were already using it for bi-weekly calls with our entire company to get information out to every one of our producers about what's happening in the marketplace. So we were able to pivot that fairly quickly. But you're right, the face-to-face or lack thereof with our clients has been challenging. And what we've tried to do is really stay in touch with everybody on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to just see how things are going, what challenges they're having with their tenants, what challenges they're having in the marketplace generally. And it's been a challenge, but it's also forced us to reinvent sort of the ways we communicate. So that's been interesting. The industry generally is underwriting has changed. Certain lending types that were available to some retail or hospitality has become more challenging. And you can read a lot of the details about everywhere there. But what I have found is, like I said, the almost 8 years being in the commercial real estate finance industry, nearly everything that I thought I knew about how to finance a deal had to be tweaked in some small or major way. And so that's been a fun, exciting, challenging, sometimes frustrating relearning experience throughout all of it. So yeah, it's been an interesting couple of months here.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've always found in the time that I've worked here at the California MBA that's one thing that I've always really enjoyed about both the residential and commercial side of the industries is it's never the same. There's always change. I mean, it's funny because the end goal is always the same. I mean, whether you're buying a home or financing a big a strip mall or a hotel or something like that, it's always the same end, but getting there has changed just radically over the years, and kind of gone back and forth and here and there and sideways at times, but it's always changing, always dynamic, and I've always enjoyed that too. So speaking of that change, I'm curious, what do you see as maybe the change that's most permanent after all that we've gone through this year?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's some extension of trends that were happening pre-COVID with regards to retail. A lot of folks were looking at retail through the lens of the Amazon effect for many, many years. A lot of ink has been spilled talking about that sort of fundamental shift within the industry. I think that shift has taken a 10-year leap forward during COVID. Direct delivery of grocery is really come up in a big way. Millions of new users. So there's lots and lots of things that are happening in that space. I think that is semi-permanent through COVID, even post-vaccine or whatever it is that gets us out of this. On the flip side, though, I think there's the more immediate, users that have been unexpectedly affected, the gyms and the entertainment complexes, these things that, pre-COVID we talked about as being experiential retail or retail that's Amazon resistant, nail salons and hair salons. These are things that nobody expected would be as affected as they are due to the pandemic. I do think that's relatively temporary. I think people are going to want to go back to the movies. They're going to want to go have a coffee. They're going to want to go to restaurants and back to the gym. So I think we just have to kind of bide our time and get through this period until that stuff starts to really open up in earnest.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's funny you mentioned the movies. In our area, one of the local movie theaters finally opened up, and our family was there the first day. So I mean, we're definitely anxious to get out and enjoy the movies again too. So speaking of the market, I mean, you kind of touched on a few aspects there, but what's your sense on the state of the market right now? Maybe some hot spots or maybe some silver linings that we don't necessarily see when we read the newspaper every day.
Yeah, I mean, look, overall transaction volume is down in every single asset type sector you can imagine. Some a lot worse than others, but there's not as much transaction volume. So that, part of the issue is a lot of people are believing that there's valuation issues due to COVID in certain sectors, that maybe I need to write down the value of this property by 10, 15%. And we're seeing MAI appraisals do just that. But because transaction volume is down, there's not a lot of market comparables to actually justify those changes. So it's a difficult position to be in as a landowner right now, as a landlord, because on the one hand, you may or may not have an asset that is diminished in value, or hopefully goes up in value in some way, shape, or form. On the other hand, you're getting some difficulties, right, handed to you by all the shutdown requirements, by some of the moratoriums that have happened on evictions, both on the multifamily and the commercial real estate side. And you're getting loan relief requests to the extent that you need them and you have loans on the books. But at some point, so the buck has to stop, right? Somebody has to pay for all of this. And it's landlords are trapped between a rock and a hard place. Bright spots, I think there are some. I think folks are adapting quite well and quite quickly to the new normal, whatever that is. The ability to have curbside dining and have alcohol served on city streets. Pre-COVID, with the ABC laws the way they are, that could have never occurred, but now it is. And I hope that that's a permanent fixture of our post-COVID era, that we can start to look and feel and live a little bit more the way Europe and other countries around the world have lived. It's a quality of life issue more than anything else, and I think some of the habits that we can see can really benefit that. And obviously, work from home is an interesting development, and that may have some downward pressure in the office space. But at the same time, a lot of people want to have more space when they get to the office. And I have 3 kids at home. You can see I'm in my office. I don't want to be at home all the time, right? So I love the flexibility of being able to be at home for dinners and that sort of thing. And I hope that doesn't go back. But at the same time, we're not going to change our demand for office space. So I think it's just going to evolve. And the landowners, the landlords that can evolve along with that demand curve are going to do very, very well post-COVID. At least that's what I feel.
Yeah, and one, I couldn't agree with you more about, sometimes it is nice to go in the office. I've got 4 kids, and you can only do so much work from home before, even if you close and lock the door, someone's going to come and pound on the door at some point, or, some emergency comes up. So it is nice to kind of break away at some point and get back to the office. So let's switch gears here a little bit. I think you kind of touched on this a bit, but Governor Newsom just recently announced that he's extending the ability of local governments to enact local commercial rent moratoriums until March of next year. Yeah. So, I mean, this is kind of hot off the press. This just happened this last week. So I know it's early, but what's your take on how that could impact the market?
Yeah, I mean, we knew, and we've been sort of digesting the fact that multifamily was going to have this, extended through, because we obviously don't want to be kicking out people out of their homes when they have no income coming in. So I totally understand that. Part of the issue, obviously, is that, again, as I sort of mentioned, the buck stops somewhere. So, these landlords, a lot of my clients are individual investors. They maybe own 1 apartment building, they own 1 retail center, and that's it. Their entire net worth is all built into this 1 asset. Even those that have multiple assets, all of their income is coming from here. And so if you have a tenant that is there, regardless of their ability to pay, but they just decide not to, and they stay, and we have no ability to remove them and put potentially a more suitable tenant in their place, maybe a tenant that can, adapt better to the COVID environment, especially if this thing goes much longer, right? What we're doing instead is just sort of kicking that can down the road and hoping that we come to a point where there is a vaccine and there is something else that solves the underlying issue. But at some point, the well is going to run dry, and there's not enough. Everybody is going to be in real trouble. The commercial side of the business, we see rents already changing to the negative for many retail centers, as an example, and that's going to that's a healthy thing, right? Demand supply curve. But on the other hand, if we have this eviction moratorium, then we can't necessarily change them as quickly as maybe they should. So you start adding these external pressures, and then the market isn't sufficient. And so, my economist hat just doesn't like these sort of bland swaths of jurisdiction coming down from on high. I think it's much better to actually take it on a case-by-case basis. I hope that, on a local jurisdiction standpoint, each of the individual cities and counties can continue to, use what they will and what is apt for their particular area. If I have any comfort in this recent announcement from Mr. Newsom, it's that, ultimately, real estate is still a local market, and as much as the state has influence, hopefully the submarket areas of what happens on a particular asset is a little bit more insulated. But we'll see. It's definitely a concern, and I think the biggest concern is, the willingness to just change the rules on a whim without really understanding the unintended consequences.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And the locality or the local nature of real estate, I think it makes you think you have a good point there. And particularly because the nature of the pandemic has been really localized too in some areas. I mean, in some areas it's no big deal, in other areas it's really hot at times, and it kind of goes back and forth. So I think to your point there, it really does need to be more of a local issue than probably a state issue at this point. So speaking of impacts in the market, what do you see as maybe having the biggest impact on the health of the market next year? I mean, is it just where we're at with the pandemic, or is it that, and if rates tick up at all? Is it the election? You don't have to get political, but I mean, is the election going to have that big an impact, or another order for Newsom? Unemployment rates? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, look, rates are at historic lows, and the Fed is telling us they're not going to be going up. So, is that a silver lining? I think it is. I think it helps, get us through. The election year is always a little bit, questionable which way things are going to go, which party ends up being in which houses, and obviously in the executive branch. I think a lot of investors, when in an election year, they're just going to wait and see how the tenor of the market goes. So yeah, we got to get through the next month and see what happens there. I have my own predictions as to what would be better for our commercial real estate market on one side or the other, but I won't go into that. But I think if we found a vaccine, right, for pandemic, and it happened, we have that vaccine and it's effective, and we have 100 million doses tomorrow, the damage is done. The economy's in a really bad position. We're definitely in a recession. And so it's going to be a two-year recovery minimum from here. Now, we're probably not going to have that widespread vaccine available until next March or April, right? So the election year is sort of a factor, right? But I think the market's general attitude about what happens with COVID-19 is by far more important. So I'm waiting to see what happens on the vaccine front. Whether really this thing is as large of a threat as people make it out to be or not is really inconsequential, because what matters is perception. Perception is 9/10 of the law, and right now perception is hugely important when it comes to COVID. So as soon as that is off the table, is the only time that we'll actually be able to start rebuilding from here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, and I mean, it's not only perception, but I mean the perception often, I think, is lagging behind where we're at with the science and the data. I mean, there's
Sure.
just no way that people's perceptions or even, politicians' statements and stuff that they just can't keep up with where we actually currently are on the ground in any given location.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I mean, the one thing I would say is, you take a small example in the mask rules, right? I'm not an anti-masker by any sense of the word. I want to follow the directions. I'm a rule follower, right? Regardless of whether it's right or not, I follow the rules. It's just what I do. But you look at it and you say, originally the announcements were, we have, masks are not important, don't wear a mask. Or if no, wait, you do have to have a mask, but only an N95. Wait, no, actually, let's just cut up a piece of t-shirt, put it on your face. Yeah, the rules changed, right? So what we need is to, even though the data is evolving and we're changing and our attitudes have shifted, what we need is just somebody to say, this is what it is. We take it or we leave it, and we move forward. We need consistency. When we don't have consistency, we have a lot of uncomfortable markets, and uncomfortable markets are really not good for anybody.
No, totally agree. So let's get back to the election for a moment. I'm curious your thoughts on this. We've got two big ballot initiatives that impact commercial real estate on this year's ballot. Prop 15 on split roll, and then Prop 21 on rent control. And Governor Newsom's already taken a position on one of them. I'm not sure if he's taken another position on the other one as of this filming. But what's your take on the potential impacts on the market? I mean, obviously these are two huge issues.
Yeah, I mean, a split roll is a bad idea. Both of these measures are bad, and for different reasons, obviously. It comes from a perception or a confusion about how things get paid for, right? We're going to tax the rich so we can give it to the poor. It's a really, really nice sentiment, but it's not actually true. And part of the issue with rent control, as an example, is that you remove first off, it doesn't address the core problem, particularly in California, and that is we don't have enough capacity. We don't have enough housing. We don't have enough ability to put people where they want to be. People love this state. They love being here, and more people want to be here. So if we're going to encourage that, we need to give them a place to live. Otherwise, rent's going to go up. It's supply demand. So there's no way to legislate that problem away. The particulars of this proposition, newer housing, 15 years, I think, is the cutoff time where it would not be subject to rent control. Okay, so you can build brand new, but right now the costs of building brand new with labor, with particularly lumber during COVID-19, are so incredibly high. All you can build is Class A plus properties. You can't build workforce housing, which is what we need as Californians. So that doesn't solve it either. So what do we need? We need the ability to do more houses cheaper, which means we need the ability to just get things done quicker, with a lot less tied up in red tape, and just allow people to build housing for people that need it. It's really that simple. And this measure ignores all of that, and instead tries to put in place a structure that we have seen over and over and over again in many jurisdictions, both inside California and outside, that it just doesn't work. It ends up favoring folks that can work the system and stay in their apartment forever and ever, even if they're not physically there, and it doesn't reward the folks that actually need this. So I think it's disingenuous in a like gracious way, and in some ways it's sort of evil, to put it the way it is. That's I don't get into politics, but when I think things are bad for people, I'm going to be not parse words. The split roll is also a problematic issue. We can talk till we're blue in the face about whether Prop 13 originally was a good idea or not, but here we are, and we're used to it. The market has it built in, and if we split that for commercial and industrial folks only, again, it comes from a level of ignorance about how people pay for things. the vast majority of commercial leases are absolute triple net leases, which means things like real estate taxes are borne and paid for by the tenant in full. And so if real estate taxes go up, the tenant's expenses go up. There's only so much renegotiation of that lease that's going to happen. And so if the tenant's expenses go up, your McDonald's hamburger is going to be more expensive. There's only one way to make that happen, right? You know, a lot of these tenants are small businesses. A lot of the owners are small businesses, and the protections, or quote unquote protections of small business in this measure really don't do anything to really help. And again, we think we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I just feel like if we actually were able to sit down and come up with a measure that could work and solve the inherent problem, then maybe we could do that. But these two are not it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think you've got a good point there, particularly on split roll. I mean, it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't get to, and I think it belies a fundamental misunderstanding. You kind of touched on it, how the market works. And this gets back to just, do businesses pay taxes or do they not pay taxes? And in reality, they do not pay taxes. It always gets passed on to the consumer at the end. And so I think that, to your point, that that if we have a split roll system in California, prices go up for the tenants and that goes up for the consumer in the end. They're the ones who end up paying that bill, that tax bill. So if you're watching this and you're interested, the California MBA is definitely opposed to both Prop 15 and Prop 21. And you can find the links to the no campaigns, the opposed campaigns, in the description below here to find out more information about how you can get involved or even support the campaigns. So Cody, I've got one last question for you. We just started our membership month drive this year. And so if you're interested, if you're watching this and you're not a member of the California MBA, you can join now in October and get a 15% discount on your first year membership dues. And so Cody, you're now a board member. You're with Slatt Capital, that's been a member for a long time. What would you say to a colleague in the industry that maybe wasn't a member of the California MBA, maybe on the fence about whether or not it's worth it?
Yeah, well, I mean, now that I'm a board member, I can see much more intimately how crucial the California MBA is to our industry. We see what is happening, especially politically, that affects our industry in real time. We know exactly what is happening, on the Capitol Mall in Sacramento, what's being talked about, and we're able to really inject our perspective on things so that lawmakers can make informed decisions and create good policy that's going to reflect our needs. So for that reason alone, I think it's absolutely crucial that anybody that's involved in the finance industry on the residential and the commercial real estate side be involved in the Cal MBA. We have to be a part of that conversation for the good of our clients and the good of our companies. The other one that's the more touchy-feely part of it is, I've been able to connect through just being around the California Mortgage Bankers Association and now as a board member with so many incredible different people, both on the board, but just at all the events and at, all the other membership benefits, that it's really it started to make my career feel less of a job and more of a lifestyle, what I want to do. I love being around people that have the same sort of feelings and the same values that I do, and we get to share a lot of that both in business and in life through our involvement together. So yeah, if there's anybody that is considering it and hesitating in any way, shape, or form, please, you can reach out to me and ask. But I definitely highly recommend membership.
Yeah, well, thanks, Cody. Yeah, and if you're interested in membership right now, you can go to joincmba.com and find out more about how you can get this month's incentive discount for joining. Again, you get 15% off your first year membership dues. And Cody, again, thanks again for the conversation today. It's been nice to catch up and chat about the market and about sort of your perspective on it. And hopefully we'll see each other in person at some point in the not too distant future.
Looking forward to it, Dustin. Thank you very much and be well. Absolutely.
You too. And so if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure and subscribe to us here on our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. And with that, we'll see you next week for another episode of Connect.